To deliver a veneer, we typically would say, okay, well, I need to have a wax up, whether that be digital or traditional wax up on a model. I need to be able to do a good preparation design. And, I need to be able to take an impression, whether that's traditional or digital nowadays. And I'm going to have to put provisionals on most of these patients. So I've got to get good at provisionals so they don't come off, and to make them look good, that the patient's happy with what they're wearing, and maybe to keep teeth from being sensitive. And the last thing I have to do, I've got to be good at cementation. None of that is going to somehow make you more successful. Now, what will make you successful is this: patience. Patience not only in you, but patience is a form of people walking through the door that are customers. But in dentistry, we all too often think of the delivery, because you're missing some major aspects of becoming successful. And so those are going to be part of the tips tonight. To do more veneers, you need to learn how to attract the customer that wants cosmetic dentistry. Now, that can be patients outside of your practice. That can be patients inside of your practice. They can be local. They can be farther away. There are lots of ways to market to different types of people, but you have to become very good at attracting or marketing to the right type of consumer, or at least have the ability to tell a marketing agency what you want done, as opposed to just giving them money and saying, I hope you can get me what I want. I don't find that working. I need to hold the reins and say, here's what you're going to build for me so that I get the patients I want. If you can attract them, you finally get to do them. The second tip: communication. You have to convert people. You have to communicate in a manner that gets them to propel and move forward. Okay? We call that conversion, or that communication, we call it inception, because we're going to plant something into your mind that makes you think a certain way or want something. To communicate isn't just through verbalization. Communication can also be through visualization. Okay? With visualization, patients get to see something. And when people see things that they desire, it now creates this emotion inside of them that they have to have what that is. Obviously, we can motivate people visually by doing simple simulations to show someone what they could look like. So your ability to show people something to motivate them becomes important. So photographic manipulation or simulations can become critical to getting more patients to say yes. So for this patient, you can see like, hey, she had bad crowns. They did a digital mock-up. It's better, but not great in my mind. But to the patient, it's like, oh my God, I've got to do this. Now, to show someone a possibility in a photograph is one thing, but also to show them on their person. This particular person came in and says, hey, I just want you to fix number 7, the lateral incisor. And I said, wow, okay, yeah, it's short. And all your teeth are discolored. You got all these other problems, but you only fix 1. He's like, yeah. I said, okay, let me see what I can do. I'm going to send out for a wax up. I could have done a mock-up on him personally. I could have done a digital mock-up as well, but that wouldn't, in my mind, have worked as well for this patient. So I did a wax up, and I showed him a new possibility by putting acrylic over his teeth as a temporary mock-up. I call it a beadline provisional mock-up. To attract and convert, my first 2 tips finally allow you to deliver. So let's look at veneer preparations. That's number 3. Got to be good at veneer preparations. But I would say nowadays, it's not just being good at them occasionally, it's being good at them regularly. That means you have to practice. It's not, I'll wait until the next patient shows up. I need to practice on a regular basis. So how am I going to do that? Well, I need to drag more patients in. I need to practice on models. I need to do something on a regular basis so I get good and comfortable, stand out and be different. In your office, maybe, depending on how you do things, you don't cut teeth down as badly. You don't remove as much tooth structure. Well, how do you do that? Here's a perfect example. On a case like this, we have a hypothetical. That blue line there represents the furthest tooth forward in their face. If you have a photograph of this patient from the front and from the side, and in looking at them, this tooth, let's say, is too far forward, then that is a limitation, and that blue line has to come back into their face. Now, if you say, hey, that tooth's in a good position, everything else can come out to that position. Well, if everything else can come out to that position, that means the tooth next door doesn't have to be cut down at all. The only tooth that has to be cut down heavily, or has to be cut down more, let's say, is the tooth that's already in a good position because I have to take something off to put something back. This tooth is slightly rotated out compared to that lateral. That means this one, I need to take a little bit off to make it look like that one. This tooth, I need to take more off of so it looks like the one next door. So if I have uniform reduction in here, means I'm taking a little bit off in certain places, but now I have uniform reduction without really reducing anything, right? At the same token, you can see this little wear facet right under my laser pointer. That little wear facet, we do not want to engage that with our ceramic. Leave it in tooth structure, okay? Anytime we can build things out away from the occlusion allows them to last longer. You still want to make a little margin or line interproximal. If you don't make this little takeaway, this little margin, then what you'll get is you'll get two pieces of porcelain swedged against each other, look like piano keys. Looks very artificial and fake. So do I ever do 100% no prep? Maybe 0.001% of the time I might. It's pretty rare. Most of the time I'm making a tiny little 0.2 of a millimeter cut, at least here. I'm not breaking the contact, but I'm making it so that the ceramic has a place to go so it looks believable in the embrasure space. So if you have a wax up, that wax up gets duplicated. That duplicated wax up gets duplicated to a stone model. That stone model, I'll show you how to work on it, but you'll take an impression of the stone model. I'll tell you how to do all that. And that impression, just like you've seen many people do, will shrink wrap temporaries over the teeth. But this is a unique thing that so in making these little tiny indentations at the gum line and into the embrasure space, again, not taking away anything interproximal. If there's a little tiny positive bleb, you can take that away. But we will duplicate this, and those motes or depressions that we cut turn into positives in the overimpression. So where I scalloped very carefully on the gingival margins that go interproximal and along the facial, okay, those, and if you're doing crowns, it'd be on the lingual also. But nonetheless, very carefully, I scribed those to create a bead line. There's a little positive pressure point here. But at the same time, the patient gets to now walk around with that same temporary, feeling great about their investment, looking at themselves saying, oh my gosh, this is amazing. They feel great. They look great. So cementation is the critical part that most people fear. It's like, oh my gosh, I got to put all these on without, having leakage and failure, right? So how do I do that? Well, like anything, there is a system to systematize it to make you successful. So what you're looking at when you get a veneer back, you want to make sure the internal is completely etched. In this case, I purposely made it look like this area has not been etched. It's not white and frosty. You need to check this. Really, you need a silane, a coupling agent that allows you to couple organic and inorganic material. It gives you the option. You get the silane with your kit. Okay, so in applying the silane, don't be cheap about applying things at this point. Use the liquid. Make sure you cover it completely. I say this because I see people in hands-on or over the shoulders trying to save pennies, and it's going to cost them thousands of dollars if they have to remake this case. Never checking occlusion. You don't want people to bite down and break something, but I'm checking contacts and I'm checking margins. Once I've determined that everything fits nicely, I'm then going to grab my water-soluble try-in paste. Guess who it's made by? Bisco. It's choice 2. Okay. And so their try-in paste is water soluble. It means it can rinse away easily. It's not going to contaminate or create a problem. Okay. I use translucent 99.9% of the time. So putting a little dab of this inside the veneer, make sure you use enough that when you seat things that the veneer is covered completely. Don't try and go cheap and use water because water will wash out or seep into the tooth. And now you have a veneer that is not optically connected. So in using the resin cement, if you filled the veneer, I personally fill the veneer, think of it like a bowl. I fill it and I push it on the tooth. I want to see a bunch of excess. Again, don't worry about using too much. I don't want to try and skimp and not have a margin filled with resin. If you are doing these 5 tips, you can see people like this and show them an opportunity if they find you and if you can communicate. And if you can, and you have systems, then you get to deliver products that look amazing.